former West Coast editor of Andy Warhol's Interview magazine and society editor of the Herald Examiner. Her cover stories are seen in Venice and Detour magazines. She is also a contributing editor to Angelus magazine. For the next half hour, Joan will bring you inside news and views on society, art, film, and the exhilarating worlds of these multifaceted people. Here is Joan Quinn.
Thank you for watching, etc. Our guest today is John Epperson, who's starring in I Could Go On Lip Syncing at the Callboard Theater in Los Angeles. John, hello.
Hi, Joan.
Tell us about your character and a little bit about the play.
Well, the name of the character is Lipsinka, a female character that I created. And in this particular production, she grows up in Louisiana and moves to Chicago and becomes a Playboy bunny and then a stripper and then an alcoholic. And hits Skid Row, and through the miracle of television, she goes to Carmen Miranda Heaven and wins an Oscar.
How long is that show?
It's 56 minutes, I think.
Do you have a lot of changes?
Costume changes, there's, I think, 8 costume changes and many backdrops.
You have a lot of changes of characters as well.
Oh, well, the soundtrack has about, at least 50 voices on it, so I'm constantly changing characters in a split second.
Would you call it a drag show?
Well, there is a drag element to it, but it takes the conventions of a drag show and turns that into something new. Some people have called the work postmodern theater. Of course, I had to explain what postmodern meant, but I guess it is postmodern theater.
Well, every time I've mentioned I could go on lip syncing or anything about lip synca, everyone always says, oh, I know, it's like Okja Fall.
Well, it has that element to it, but in Okja Fall they take famous people and they impersonate them, and I've created my own character, and that's part of the appeal.
There is a difference then.
Oh, there's definitely a difference.
Yours
yes.
actually has a storyline.
It has an abstract storyline, and although I am lip syncing, it's done in a very, I hope, knock on wood, unique way that's never been done before.
Well, if you actually lip sync, how can you call it a musical?
Well, it's a musical because there is music on the soundtrack. It's mostly music. There is some speaking. But it's not a conventional musical by Broadway standards.
No, you're not singing.
No, not in this show. I do sing, but in this show I don't utter one sound.
Well, we have a tape of your performance, of another performance. We're just going to roll that in right now, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about it, because it shows several of your characters.
Yeah. This is a demo film that Bob Frame asked me to do. Bob is primarily known as a glamour still photographer and wants to get into film. And we did this in 12.5 hours. It's about 5 minutes long. And as you see, that's Lipsinka performing on stage, but he had me do other characters sitting in the audience watching myself.
It looks like an old 40s movie.
Well, that was intentional. Of course, it is in black and white, obviously. And there's some smoke, and the 16mm film is kind of grainy, so that was intentional to make it look like an old movie. After all, Lipsinka's set in a time warp of like 1955 to 1965 anyway. So it was appropriate that it looked like an old film.
There you were again
as a cigarette girl, yes.
Why wait? Now
and that's my body double walking across there in the cigarette girl outfit. And there I am going insane.
Wow. How do you keep that figure?
Oh, well, I sometimes take ballet class, but I do exercises every day to keep my legs in shape.
Look at all those different wigs.
Yes, and a Gucci outfit that is now so popular across America. To me, it's the cigarette girl again. These models they brought in from Miami.
That was great.
Thank you.
Have you done the Lipsinka show at other venues other than Los Angeles at the Callboard?
Well, I Could Go On Lip Syncing played for a year in New York off Broadway, and it played for 2 nights in Baltimore, and it played for 2 weeks in Key West, and then I did another show for a cabaret venues that played in San Francisco at Josie's and here in Los Angeles at Cafe Largo.
But was it the same show, or
It's
was
not
it
the same
portions?
show. No, it's not even portions. It's a completely different show. Same character, different show.
I see.
Yeah.
Do you think you'll create a new character?
Well, I have created other characters actually, and I would like to do other characters, but right now the public is interested in Lipsinka, so it's fine with me to just keep doing that for a while.
Do you think Lipsinka will ever get old?
Well, she's already old. I mean, Lipsinka looks like she's 45 anyway, so hopefully she's going to stay 45.
How did you name her?
You know, it's like a light bulb that went on over my head. I knew I wanted to create some kind of artificial character, and I wanted to evoke fashion models like Dovima and Verushka.
Yeah, very tall.
Very tall and very thin. And it was sometime in 1982. The name just came to me, Lipsinka. That was it.
That was it?
Yep.
When you're performing, do you like a certain kind of an audience? Is there something that gets you going more than...
Well, when I first started doing this show, of course it helped when people were screaming and carrying on. And then we started getting audiences that had been told, this show is funny, you're going to laugh your head off, and they would come and they would sit there like, okay, make me laugh. And they were kind of quiet. And it used to kind of throw me, but after doing the show for so long and performing in various places all over the country, you just get used to, you know, you go out there and you do your show, and if they laugh, they laugh, and if they don't, they don't. But usually when they're not laughing, you can see them smiling, you know, even though they're not.
Can you see what's going on
I can
in the
see a little
audience?
bit in the first row, yes. And then I hear afterwards that even though they weren't laughing and screaming, they enjoyed themselves. So
The night I went to see the show, everyone stood up and cheered. Do they give you standing ovations often?
well, closing night in New York, people gave me a huge standing ovation, and a lot of people I knew who kept saying we're going to come see the show finally did come that night, and it was pretty emotional. And everyone stood up.
The theater in New York was a little bit larger, wasn't it?
Actually, well, the theater you saw it in, the first theater, was about 75 seats larger.
Because the one here is so intimate, you feel like, you just feel like you're a part of the show, like you're talking to people right there.
Yes, and the theater here is very shallow, so
Yes.
you're very close to the stage. The other theater was very long.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah.
This is very charming, this way.
Yeah, we're pleased with it.
What kind of stage training have you had?
Well, not too much formal stage training. I have studied dance, but you know, Joan, I worked with American Ballet Theater for years.
I know you have a classical background, so I wanted you to show us your long fingers and tell us why.
Well, I studied piano since I was in the 4th or 5th grade. And I played the piano for many, many years. And when I moved to New York, I got a job working with American Ballet Theater. And I like to say that I learned choreography by osmosis, because I've watched the best. You know, I've played for Baryshnikov. I mean,
I know.
can't get any better than that.
I know. I was there watching you play. Do you maintain a certain diet during the show?
Well, I would be on the diet I'm on anyway, even if I weren't doing the show, and I would be thin anyway if I weren't doing this diet, but I am a macrobiotic vegetarian.
Oh, you are?
Yes.
Do you cook?
I do cook. I don't have much time to cook, so I actually go to some great health food stores here and buy pre-cooked food, and I'm on the run a lot.
I was going to say, with the show, do you eat at a certain time? I know on Fridays and Saturdays you do 2 shows.
I'm on Mary Martin's schedule. You know, I eat breakfast at 12, I eat lunch at 4, and I eat dinner after the show.
And then you fly through the sky on the stage, Mary Martin. Do you have a favorite food with macrobiotic?
A favorite food? Well, it's kind of a bland diet, but what's my favorite food? I do eat fish. I am allowed to eat fish, and I like to eat eel. I love eel. Maybe that's my favorite food.
Maybe. It's hard to get here, isn't it?
Oh, not at Japanese restaurants. You can get it.
I know on Fridays and Saturdays you do 2 shows.
Yes.
And you run Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Yes.
What do you do to unwind? Or do you just flop into bed? Or do you have some kind of program?
Well, on Thursday and Sunday I have only 1 show, so I usually go out to eat after the show. And then I go home.
Can you go to any type of restaurant on your... diet?
Well, a good restaurant is going to have something I could find. And I like eating Japanese food, as I said, so I do that. Then I go home and I soak in a tub for about 30 minutes.
Do you every time
After
you
every
perform?
Performance, yes. And then I put ice on my knees to help my knees.
The knees go first.
Yes, they do. And I just sit in front of the television set and watch old movies.
Do you?
Yeah. I mean, that's where I get my inspiration from anyway.
The glamorous life of a star.
Right. Mm.
How do you like Los Angeles?
Oh, I love Los Angeles. I wouldn't like it if I weren't working. I've been here sometimes with ABT and been kind of depressed, you know.
That's right, I forgot that.
But I've got a great job, so.
So are you doing anything with ABT now?
No, I went to see them last week, though.
Did you? Do you miss anything about the East when you're out here?
Well, I haven't missed it yet, but I have a feeling, you know, after a while I'm going to start missing going to the film forum and missing my friends,
great.
of course.
Yeah. Do you have any pet peeves?
Smoking.
Oh, great!
Yes, I know there's a défense de fumée sign on the front door of your house.
Oh, good, great.
That's my pet peeve.
Well, especially in California, I think we're more aware of it than in the East.
Well, yeah, the smog is worse here, for one thing.
But I mean, we're aware of people smoking. I think we're more health conscious.
Yes, I've often heard that that is true of Californians, but I know a lot of people who are health conscious in New York. You know.
And don't smoke as well?
Yes.
What dreams do you have for John Epperson?
Dreams for John Epperson. Well, I'd love to see a lip-sync a television spectacular.
Oh, that sounds good.
A lip-sync a movie would be nice. Lip-sync is Big Adventure, maybe.
Yes, go on.
Let's see, big dreams. I'd like to do a show in Las Vegas. I'd like to do another big show in New York. I'd like to do a show in Paris. Thierry Mugler keeps telling me he's going to bring me to Paris, and he hasn't done it yet.
You've got to do that. You'd be perfect.
Well, I will.
You'd be the ending. He does the most wonderful finales.
Well, besides his fashion show, he wants to do just a lip-syncer show. So
he's very clever. He knows just what's happening and where to make it happen.
He does.
We'll be right back with John Epperson, who's starring in I Could Go On Lip Syncing. And joining us after the break will be director, choreographer Justin Ross. Hello, we're back again with John Epperson, who plays Lip Synca, and I Could Go On Lip Syncing. And with us is the choreographer, director of the play, Justin Ross. Hi, Justin.
Hi, Joan.
Justin, how did you start choreographing something as complicated as the play that John just told us about?
When John first asked me to direct him in a piece, he gave me a tape of music that he had enjoyed performing to in the past, a rather long tape. And I listened to it and chose the numbers that I thought had the most inherent dramatic qualities. Songs, as opposed to songs that were perhaps more cabaret-ish, but ones that had little vignettes within the song, songs that brought pictures to my mind. And from that came the storyline of I Could Go On Lip Syncing, as John had told you earlier, of Lip Synca's humble beginnings in Louisiana to, you know, becoming a mega superstar, and everything that happens in between.
So each piece of music conjured up something in your mind that went along with?
Yes, that's how I prefer to direct and to choreograph if I'm fortunate enough to be in a position to choose the projects that I am working on. It's because either the words or the music bring images to my mind, and therefore I'm able to bring something to them.
What about the dance steps? There are so many dance steps involved and so many moves on stage. Was he hard to teach?
No, John wasn't hard to teach at all.
I resisted something.
John resisted a little bit. And it's thrilling now, a couple of years later, to watch him performing, because initially he was a little afraid of too much choreography. You know, the essential style of musical comedy, 50s, 60s kind of movement, John has, I think, you know, as a natural, it's a given, it's within his body. But once we started actually mapping out specific steps and diagrams, a lot of people say, how do you remember steps? It's very much like a mathematical equation, except with the body.
But he had to remember the steps then. You just map them out.
Rehearse it,
the more you rehearse,
memory.
Does it?
Yes.
With the music?
Yes, yes.
Were you conscious of all the costume changes? Were those choreographed as well?
Oh yes, they're, I mean, down to the second.
Do you take that? You take that into consideration? That's part of your.
Well, yeah. I mean, you know, you can't have a performer doing a grand jeté, which is a big leap with the legs wide open, if they're wearing, you know, something that's very confining. So then you would, you know, concentrate more on smaller movements, perhaps with the arms, the hands, even with the eyes. You know, John's face is so wonderfully expressive and mobile that you know, we took that into consideration as well, and sometimes even the facial movements are choreographed.
Do you go to every performance?
I don't go to every performance, but I do go a lot. Initially, I would go because it was just my job to be there to make sure that everything was working in sync, no pun intended. Now it's just a pleasure to go because I love watching him perform, and it's a thrill for me because you know, I'm standing in the back of the house hearing 100 people every night, you know, laughing and responding to something that I felt was funny, and that's just a great gift.
Were there any changes? Do you make any changes during the course of the run?
We did change a couple of things from the New York performance. There's one highlight in the show which we refer to as the telephone medley. It's a series of telephone calls. We decided to add a second, shorter version towards the end of the show, which I think is it's a nice touch. It's such a great spot in the beginning that I think it only enhances to have a shorter version towards the end of the piece. Then there were also a few things that were in the show in New York that we decided to cut because, for one reason or another, they didn't add to the momentum of the show.
But once the show is under production, say at the call board, you don't go back and change what's gone on.
Well, actually, there's one very short snippet that's being cut tonight in the show because as much as we liked it and enjoyed it, it cut the momentum of the build. Each number, as the show goes along, builds to a climax to ultimately when, you know, Lip Sync wins her Academy Award. And this just seemed to break the momentum. So as much as we hated losing it, I think for the audience it will just, it builds and builds and builds.
But you know, we did change the show once in New York. But every time we have to change the show, we have to go into a studio and make a whole new tape. It's not like just cutting a line out of a spoken word show, which is easy.
That's what I was going to ask you. And how do you remember? Because you have to learn it right that immediately, right?
Well, I've got pretty good memory because, you know, as we said earlier, I was trained as a classical pianist, so from the age of 10, I was told, memorize this. So,
and so you can. If Justin isn't there at the theater, do you get nervous? Do you like to have him there?
I don't get nervous. I like having him there. I like having anybody there. Why not? You never know who's going to show up. That's the fun part here in Los Angeles.
Who has showed up?
Well, Paul Schrader was there the other night, I found out, and no one even knew who he was, I guess, because he's not a recognizable celebrity. But he was there, I found out later, and the last celebrity we had was Isabella Rossellini, and Lily Tomlin was there the other night.
Madonna.
Madonna came opening night. Bob Mackie was there.
Terry Garr, Arlene
Estelle Getty,
Sorkin,
right? Arlene Sorkin, John Lovitz.
Dana Delaney.
Oh,
Right.
great. So you have a lot of different people
John
popping
Glover.
in.
Yes, I'm waiting for the day Joan Collins shows up.
She should make it. Do you two see each other socially, or is this just a business proposition?
Oh, no.
Yeah, we went
had-
out last night.
Yeah, we went to see a wonderful play. No, I think one of the things that has made our collaboration so successful is that our sensibilities are very similar. We both enjoy the same kind of entertainment.
Justin, I know the show depends totally on tapes and electronics, and I'm sure that can't go perfectly every night. Do you have any funny stories?
Yeah, we had a couple of mishaps. Fortunately, nothing's gone wrong here in Los Angeles. In New York, a couple of times, the tape broke.
What happens? What do you do?
Well, the first time, I was so stunned that I started saying, oh, this isn't supposed to happen. But then we discovered we'll just send the puppeteer out to do it because we don't want the audience to see me speaking, because we are going to keep doing the show after we fix it and we don't want to break the illusion.
And you're the only person on stage all the time?
Yes, except for the puppeteer whom you never see. But one time, I'm sure Justin was getting to, was the time the set fell down in New York.
A chunk of the wall that a few of the drops were attached to just came out of the wall, and
it was like the end of ABT's Buy a Dare. And I didn't want the audience to think you're going to get that every night for $15.
How did you fall into it? What did you do? Do you go off? Or?
I turned around and actually it came in pieces. It actually came in one section. I thought, well, that's not going to happen again. And then the whole thing just came crashing down, and I just had to stop, and I said, this is not supposed to happen.
Okay.
So they swept it aside, and we just kept doing the show without a set.
Oh, you did? But
And we did it for a couple of weeks without a set.
Did you stop tape on that, or did?
Oh, we had to stop, yes.
And then you start again. Have you ever missed a beat? You know, the telephones go off like this.
You know, the only time I know that I ever missed a beat is that I saw someone in the audience who was sleeping. And I thought, how can someone sleep through this? But I didn't even know I had missed it until afterwards. They told me that I missed the whole line.
Did you?
Yes. I don't think you were there.
Oh, you know, it's funny. I just have to say something. When you had mentioned that we played for 2 nights in Baltimore,
Yes.
That was a 2-night gig.
Oh, that was all
I mean, because it was followed with, we played a year in New York and 2 nights in Baltimore.
Exactly.
No, they didn't run us out of town. We were only supposed to be there for 2 nights.
And John Waters came the second night.
I was just going to say about Divine coming from Baltimore, so that was a great place to be. I'm sure they loved it there. We have a tape showing some of the fancy footwork from the play. So we're going to roll that in, and maybe you can just tell us a little bit. It's a portion of I'm Going to Live Until I Die, I think. If you watch the monitor, you'll see it.
Sure.
This is from...
Well, this actually isn't Live Till I Die. This is the one disco moment that we have in the show, which is very funny because it follows a speech where Lipsinka is talking about how she sang at the Academy Awards, and that was a song she chose to sing, was Turn the Beat Around. This is Live Till I Die, which comes at the point in the show where Lipsinka has picked herself up from the gutter and her alcoholic bout, and gotten herself back on the track, and now she's a star, and it's sort of a Live Till I Die is a testament to she's got her stuff together, she's going to live life to the fullest.
Except for the occasional manic moment that's in this number.
But we can see the use of the hands, the way you were talking
His hands
about.
are beautiful. They're incredibly expressive.
There's a manic moment.
I think the moment when I knew that I wanted to work with John was when I saw him in New York at a club, and after all of this wonderful musical comedy madness, he went into The Dying Swan from Swan Lake.
Oh, because he'd seen it so many times.
And it's thrilling. I mean, it's really beautiful. The bend of his body and his arms in the back. And
the white body, the powdery white feeling,
And I thought, this man has some extraordinary talent.
Well, I picked it up from Makarova.
Of course. Who else would you pick it up from? Justin, besides being a choreographer and a director, I know you've had a film career, a theater career. Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, well, I grew up on Broadway shows. I was originally born in Brooklyn, went to Performing Arts High School.
Oh, you did?
And as soon as I graduated, I started working in the theater. I did my first show at the Public Theater, and then went on to Magic Show, Pippin, and A Chorus Line on Broadway. Did a number of films, The Fan.
I love that. Lauren Bacall.
Yeah, she was great to work with. And then I played Greg, the role that I did on Broadway, in A Chorus Line in the film version. And last year I did 2 films, Funny About Love and Quick Change.
John tells me that people recognize you so much from Chorus Line because they play the video over.
Sometimes, you know, they run up and they say things like, "Oh my God, you were in A Chorus Line." I hated that movie. But nonetheless, it still is very thrilling to be recognized. And truth be told, you know, as much as people, they felt very passionate. I mean, A Chorus Line changed a lot of people's life in addition to the way American plays, musicals were staged. So it's got quite a history. I think it was sort of up against a wall being turned into a film.
Yeah,
but for as many people that had negative feelings about it, it did you know, change a lot of people's lives, especially kids. It's really thrilling to, you know, have teenagers run up to me and say, you know, I saw that movie over and over again, and that's why I'm here in New York or I'm here in Los Angeles and I want to be a dancer. So
that's wonderful.
It was a thrill to be involved.
We have, being here in Los Angeles, you're going to be here for a while with your play. We have a lot of parties in Los Angeles all the time, and when I cover the parties, I always take my camera, and I have a click page that we're going to put on right now. And these photos were taken at Will Rogers State Beach. Roll the click, Joan Quinn's click. Closing Joan Quinn's Etc. with the click page. Right now we want to thank John Epperson so much for being with us.
Thank you, you're welcome.
And Justin Ross.
Well, thank you, Joan.
The time went so fast. Nice to see you, and watch next week.